Okay, we're back here with our, what is this, our third or fourth Skies Over Grimerica? We got our buddy Dave W. Mathisen back here. We'll smooth these out a little more every time, but people are loving them, so we'll definitely keep going, and we're going to do another little Skies Over Grimerica segment. I think we've got an exciting month, and Grambo is over here. Support the show, guys, grimerica.ca/support. It's the only way we could actually be doing this video stuff now is because of the support we've got in the past.
Actually, the only way we could be doing the show at all.
Period.
But,
yeah. Gotta live behind a dumpster still, but.
Yeah. And we got Michael here too with us. Hey, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me back after.
You're welcome.
Eat the Michael.
Sorry, guys. I'll try and talk right into the mic like this for you tonight.
Eat the Michael. That's your new show nickname. Welcome back, Dave.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Welcome to Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I think I know I've heard you on different shows. So anyway, I've got a full plate of stuff for you, but we can take it at an easy pace. Whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah. I've loved the ones that I've heard so far, so I think we should just.
Yeah, let's go for it. You just kind of let's just jump into it, and we'll kind of poke and prod if we have any questions along the way.
So it is. We're recording this on January 17th, 2018. So we've done one in November, we've done one in January, and we kind of spaced it out a little bit. So we're halfway through January, but I'm going to follow kind of the same format. Can you see up on your screen the little roadmap of where we'll go today?
Yep, and we should also add that these are just going to be bonus eps and their own standalone things here now, so we won't be doing the intros and cutting them short and stuff like that.
Yeah. I didn't want to step on somebody's pre-interview time either. So
yeah, and a lot of it's best if you are listening to this. It is best to just go over and check out the video because that's kind of what this is geared around. And if you're not watching the video, you're missing a lot of the context.
Right. So mostly my research involves the connection between the myths and the stars. And I'll be talking about things that you can see out in the night sky, the skies over Grimerica. And you can get this information from all kinds of different places, Sky and Telescope or Night Sky, or all these different places will tell you about things that are going on with the moon or the planets. But what I want to try and tie it into is this evidence from around the world of an ancient system that is connected to the stars. And it's using a language that involves the heavenly cycles of the stars. So by having this, kind of our hope is that everybody can go out and enjoy, if it's at all possible, you can go out and enjoy the night sky even more, because it's pretty much free to do that. And the more you do it, the more familiar it is. I think I've used this metaphor before on Skies Over Grimerica, but it's like if you go into a new town or you've just moved to a new town and you go to a bar or a pub and you don't know anybody in there and you feel weird, but the more you keep going back, pretty soon you start to recognize people and oh, that guy always sits over there. And then after a little while, they start to become your friends. That's the same thing with the stars. When you first go out into the night sky, it can be daunting. You feel like you're in a totally alien environment, but pretty soon you start to recognize, wait, that guy always sits over there. And then after a while, they become your friends. So moving without any further ado into, this is a calendar feature that was inspired by Darren saying, hey, maybe you could just tell us when is the sweet spot for seeing the stars. And a lot of that has to do with the moon. And when the moon is full, it really dominates the sky. You don't get as good stargazing when the moon is full. But after the moon is full, so I'm going to just get my little pen here. After the full moon, we're already starting.
We're in prime time right now, really.
Yeah, we're in the sweet spot. So we're recording this on the 17th. But after the full moon, the moon starts to rise a little bit later each night. So even when it's still pretty full, a quarter moon is what we would think of as a half moon. But it's a quarter of the full sphere of the moon. But even when it's a quarter or a half moon, it's rising so late, it's rising later and later, that it's pretty much out of the way about 6 days after full. Depends on when you're watching. You know, some of the listeners may be working a graveyard shift, and they may be getting up at 4 a.m. to look at the moon. So the moon would be up if it's at 4 a.m. But it's getting thinner and thinner. It's waning thinner and thinner as we get to new moon, and we just had a new moon. So right now, we're in this beautiful time when the moon is rising. This is moon set, actually. This is when the moon is setting here. It's setting really close after the sun, so it's a really narrow sliver. It doesn't interfere with your stargazing at all, so this is a great time to see the moon. It's going to be getting thicker and thicker here. So after the new moon, that's when you don't see it at all. It starts to get, the very thin crescent gets thicker and thicker until we get back to a first quarter. And after that, it's not that great of stargazing. So this is a good weekend for going out to see the stars. And then we have a full lunar eclipse coming up, and we'll talk about that. But
I've got kind of an offbeat question. How come there's always seems to be a lot of confusion around when the new moon is? Like, some people think it's today, some people think it was yesterday.
Yeah, good question. So there's an actual point of new moon. So new moon is when the moon passes exactly between the Earth and the sun. When we're in a perfect alignment, which there's this word syzygy, but when we're in a perfect alignment when the moon is perfectly aligned with the sun, that's a new moon. So that's the exact point of new moon. So here's a solar eclipse. Right here, I'll grab a pen. And you can see we're in a perfect alignment at one point on the Earth. Perfect alignment with the moon. It's only going to pass through that point like for 1 instant. And then after that, it's not the exact point of new moon anymore. But you don't see the moon when it's exactly got its dark side towards us. First of all, it happens when the sun is up, right? But it's also got its non-illuminated side towards us. So you do not see the new moon at the exact point of new moon. You're going to see that first very thin crescent after the sun has passed up the moon. What's happening, the way I think of it each month is that the sun is catching the moon and overtaking it. So
it is actually sort of somewhat of a prolonged event in one sense.
Yeah, so it's a long answer to your question, but right before the new moon, you've got a very thin crescent, like almost just a line pointing towards the sun right before sunrise. Then the sun overtakes the moon. That's the point of new moon. Then you've got this very thin crescent following the sun, following down behind the sun after sunset. So the brand new moon that you see, you're not going to see it on this day. You're going to see it on this day, or if you're not able to see it on this day, you'll see it for the first time on this day. And in the ancient times, they had priests or holy men or priestesses or holy women who would look. They would just look for that first thin crescent of the new moon. I can show you actually the way it looks looking out into the sky, but I'm just describing it. I could draw it with a really bad pen here.
No, that's pretty good.
Does that answer your question? So basically, that very first, what you're seeing is the very new crescent, but it's no longer a new moon. You can't see, the new moon is the dark side of the moon pointing towards us. Yeah. Then you're seeing that very brand new, the baby crescent, and then it starts to grow and grow as it gets farther behind the sun, farther away from the sun. So it's a great question. We do have time to just quickly show it. I'm going to show a different screen here. So this is Stellarium. Are you guys seeing that?
No.
Yep. Over here.
Nope.
You got to be watching 6 screens,
Yeah, right.
Graham.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring in the sun. I'm going to bring the sun back in by clicking on this. So now I'm going to scale the moon up to like that. And let's see if I can get us a moon. Oops.
Works on the feed still.
This is just
Are you able to see?
behind.
Yeah, that's right. No, I was just worried that when that screen jumps here that it fucks up this, but it doesn't. Yep, we can see. Yep.
Right on. So I'm going back to the 16th. That was yesterday. But here we are. It's 7 p.m. So now I'm going to go towards the morning. So all the stars are rotating towards the west. Yeah, that's the fainter half of the Milky Way. That's looking away from the galactic core.
The brighter half would be like down below where we can see.
Yeah, the whole sky is rotating around. So we're like inside. It's like a wedding ring in the sky that's flipping. So we're inside the ring. So sometimes we see one inside of the ring. Sometimes we see the other inside of the ring. But now you're firing off multiple questions here, Darren. I'm not.
So yeah, we can step back.
Different phenomenon. But back to the. So now here comes the sun. Let me see if it. Yeah. So there's your sun. Where's the moon in here? That's Venus. Where's the moon? It doesn't look like the moon. I didn't scale it up enough. But you can see it's trailing just behind the sun, right? So you're not, on the day of new moon, you're going to see it after the sun goes down. So here, the day of new moon, you're not going to see anything. But the next day, so new moon happened on the 16th. So now the sun is traveling through the sky, right? Here we are this is today. This is this morning. It's 8 a.m. It's moving towards 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Darren's at work on top of a tall tower in the snow. It's noon. We're having lunch. The sun's starting to go down. This is when we're going to see that first crescent, but I need to bump up the moon's size. Let me see if I can make it bigger. I don't know why it's not. Oh, because I don't have that box checked. So now we've got a new moon. See how the moon is trailing the sun?
Yeah.
If I went 3 or 4 days ago, here's the 15th, here's the 16th. Now the moon's in front of the sun. It's ahead of the sun is catching the moon. So let me go back to the 15th or the 14th. We'll see the sun in the morning. See, we'll see the moon in the morning.
Right. Yeah, you see the moon in the morning.
Here's right before sunrise. You see how that's the only part of the moon that's a very thin sliver. Let me go back even one more day.
I remember that.
So you got that? So now I'm all the way back to the 10th. You see, the farther away from the sun the moon is, the more of it is illuminated. But as it gets, because what's happening is it's orbiting in between us and the sun. So now as it gets closer to being right between us and the sun, just a thin sliver. Basically, the sun is catching it. Here we are, we're almost at sunrise in the morning. The sun hasn't come up yet. Let me zoom out a little. The sun hasn't come up yet, and here's that very thin crescent. We go to the next day. The sun is getting closer. Here's how far away the sun is. Is this making any sense?
Yep.
Here comes the sun. There it is. So you won't see this very thin crescent very much longer after the sun comes up. Here comes the 13th. Now it's a super thin, right? The sun is catching the moon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now the 14th. Now the 15th. The sun's about to catch it. Now the 16th. At a certain point in time, at an exact point in time during the day, the sun will catch the moon on the 16th. That's the point of new moon.
Is that now different for different parts of Earth?
Well, yeah, it's one time. It's one exact moment, but it's a different time. Like I forget what time it was this month. I think it was 9 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, which is 1 in the morning here in California. It's the exact same moment. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's a different time zone, right? So now on the 17th, now the moon is trailing the sun. So now as the sun goes down, after the sun sets, we'll have a very thin crescent, maybe not even visible because it's so close behind. Let me zoom in. Yep, nothing. So now let's go to the 18th. Oh, it's a little farther away. You get a very thin line. So that's what they would look for, like who can see the moon first. 19th, now we get this very thin crescent, see? And so this is our baby new moon. It's new to you. Because it's new to us because we couldn't see it when it was exact point of new moon. But this is the new part of the moon cycle. And then each day, the moon gets a little older, the crescent gets a little thicker, the horns of the moon are strengthening up. Now the moon is waxing, it's growing. So each day, it's getting bigger and bigger until we get to a full moon is going to be when we're opposite. So let me go back to the 17th and go back to our diagram. How do I stop sharing? Oh, I know, I got to get out of full screen. So now I can stop sharing and go back to, this is why we have a sweet spot, because when the moon is right here and when it's brand new, it's a very thin crescent. But when it gets all the way around to this side, the sun's rays are hitting this side of the moon. This side of the moon is lit up from the sun. All this over here. This side. This side. So that's your full moon. When the moon is on the opposite side from the Earth, it's getting the full sun's rays on that side, and we're seeing a full moon. We're seeing all this. So your sweet spot is kind of when the moon is over here. This is when the moon is dominating the sky because it's getting lots of rays. It's on this side, it's getting lots of rays.
And that's coming up in like, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, so here's the full moon is going to be on the 31st, exactly 2 weeks. That's when we get the lunar eclipse. So a lunar eclipse can only happen at a full moon, and a solar eclipse can only happen at a new moon. And you see why? Because a solar
eclipse
in that
is little white dot when we were in Oregon.
We're in that little black dot, actually.
The little white dot and the little black dot.
Yeah, the little white dot is trying to point you towards that's the exact, that shadow is going to race across the Earth as the Earth spins. And you're only going to get a partial eclipse in here. So this is good because it's actually a segue into talking about the lunar eclipse. So this is a solar eclipse up top. This is what you see in a solar eclipse. This is what you see in a lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse, because the moon is smaller than the Earth, the solar eclipse only can be seen within that band that perfectly black dot goes over. This is called the penumbra. This is called the umbra. Those are just Latin words for shadow and partial shadow. And actually any object, not just the moon, does have a shadow and a partial shadow. Like even behind me on the wall, we've got shadows and partial shadows showing up, umbras and penumbras. So, but the moon's perfect darkest shadow gives you the total eclipse, and the penumbra only gives you a partial eclipse. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Then on the lunar side, the Earth is much bigger than the moon. So our shadow, our umbra, is going to cover the whole moon. Like everywhere on the moon gets a total solar eclipse. When we have, if you were standing on the moon, you'd get that total solar eclipse from the Earth, no matter where you were on the moon. You don't have to be in some little dot because the Earth's so much bigger than the moon.
In the middle of butt fuck nowhere and 30 miles of traffic.
Come on, that was a beautiful part of Oregon.
It was pretty great. It was pretty great.
So for those who've just tuned in, Darren and I came from like totally opposite ends of the earth, ended up like within 4 miles of each other. We didn't know that we were both heading towards the same area to see. Because I kept it secret. Darren kept it secret. I wasn't telling people where I was going. Anyway.
Darren just didn't know, actually.
Well. No, I had a pretty good idea where I was going, but I was keeping it fairly vague.
But back to the lunar eclipse now. Everyone...
I didn't want a bunch of lunars showing up.
Forgot.
Yeah, everyone who's on the side of the Earth that's spinning towards the moon, when it's in that shadow, can see the total lunar eclipse. But what's going to happen is the penumbra, that's this part, that's the penumbra, is going to contact the moon first, and then the umbra. So you're going to get the partial kind of effect on the moon first, then you get the umbra, then you go back into the penumbra. So the reason I pulled this diagram out was really to show the difference between the umbra, that's the darkest shadow, and the penumbra, the partial shadow, as it relates to the eclipse, because here's what it's going to look like when the eclipse, the total eclipse, this is for January 31st. Oops. This is where you can see the total eclipse. And it's based on where you are on the Earth. The Earth has to be spinning. You have to be on the side of the Earth that's pointing towards the moon when it's in that shadow. So it stands to reason that part of the Earth will not get around to the moon until the moon has already passed out of the shadow in time, right? So here's where you can see, and for people in North America, we can see most of it. Anyone in this white zone can see all of it. So if you're in Australia, you can see all of it. Why isn't my pen coming up? Hold on.
So we're only going to see the eclipse early in the morning, right?
Right. So you have to get up pretty early in the morning. These are, oops.
What time do you have to get up?
Here they are. So this is the times.
Please don't be too.
This is the times in California. So what time is it where you guys are? It's 8:30 for me.
We're an hour later than you.
Okay, so here's, I can't see my whole screen. But over on this part, I've got the universal times. That's UTC. That's the Greenwich Mean Times. Can you see those over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be U4.
And over here, I've got the California times or the Pacific times. So P1, this is
we're 7 hours. We're 7 hours behind that, so we'd be 7:08 a.m. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. So as long as it's not cloudy, I'll be right there pulling into the work.
But P1 is right when this first edge of the moon starts to go into the penumbra. So that's not really, you're not going to notice very much.
And that's then it's just like Eastern Europe that sees that? Or do these people in do you see that in Alaska too? Would you see
No, it's like the very tip of whatever that is, Nova Scotia.
Or this is P1 in here.
Everyone over here is going to... Yeah. Everyone from here over is going to see...
Oh, I see. P1's that thin little stream that goes through or Chile or whatever. Argentina?
These guys...
I don't know.
These guys are going to see everything.
Oh, there's another one there. That's crazy how that works.
These guys will only see it after U1. So as you go across, because these guys are seeing it at moonrise, we're seeing it before the moon sets.
But technically, it's at the same time.
Yeah, it's the same moon. We're seeing it at different sides of the Earth. So I've got another diagram that shows why it's setting on, if you believe in it.
That's great. So if you're in Calgary, you're going to see it around 7 in the morning. And if you're on the West Coast, it's going to vary from somewhere between 5, 6, 7 a.m. if you're in the western side of the country.
Yeah, so what happens is U1 is when we first start going into that umbra, this is where the moon starts really turning whatever color it's going to turn. Usually it's some shade of red. You can't predict in advance. U2 is when the whole moon gets inside the umbra. So this is at 3:48 for us or 4:48 in the morning for you guys, you'll see the moon start to become red. At 4:51 in the morning for us or 5:51 in the morning for you guys, the whole moon will be inside the umbra. And then there's a point of max eclipse. That's at 5:30 for us, 6:30 for you.
I'll be driving. Maybe almost. I should leave early that day.
Yeah, you want to see it before the sun comes up, because once the sun
doesn't come up here till like 8:30.
Okay, so right on. So there
we
you go.
got some extra time there.
I think it's like 7:45.
So hopefully
8:15.
So hopefully this slide will help people. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but with that, I mean, this came from NASA, which they may be hiding some secrets from us, but the eclipse stuff I think is pretty straightforward. Yeah. So those are the times for people in North America. Probably, if you're on the East Coast, just add 3 to that. But if you're in Europe or something, use these. I think over here are where I've got my. I can't see it because I've got my video feed over here. But I think the UTC times are over here. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Over there. So you can figure out for wherever you are in the world using those UTC times. But that's your lunar eclipse for end of January. So we actually get 2 full moons in January. So some people call that a blue moon. Like when you get 2, they say, it's once in a blue moon. You get 2 full moons because we had a full moon on New Year's, and now we get another full moon. That happens on about 2% of the full moon, so it's not extremely rare. But they're saying, this is
so it's like
super moon.
Once every 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
I think it's actually once every 2.5 years or something. We get 2. It's not that rare, but anyway, you don't always get a lunar eclipse on a second full moon of the month, so that's kind of exciting. But all eclipses are exciting and worth going out to see if it's at all possible to do so. So there's your January. I also put up a February, since I don't know exactly when we'll have another, when we'll line up for February, but there's your lunar eclipse. It happens on the day before February 1st. And this day right here, that's the next new moon. That's an important one because that's the new moon for the lunar calendar for countries that celebrate the Lunar New Year. China, this is the day after that new moon. That's Chinese New Year right there. That's the start of a new year for China and other countries that use the lunar. It's mostly countries near China. So Korea has a very big Lunar New Year festival, Vietnam, all those countries that are close to China. But this is like a huge, huge holiday in China. Everybody goes back to their home. They also do that in Korea. They go back to like the special grove or little, forest place that's associated with their family and do, special rituals and things. So that's the next new moon will be the start of Lunar New Year, a new Lunar New Year. So we get another
just
sweet
shut
spot.
her down from like our Christmas to their New Year. Boom.
Yeah,
that'd be perfect. 6 weeks off, do some reflecting.
Rituals, go to the grove.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, the special grove near the igloo. So these are moon rise times. I put up the moon rise times and on this one, and I put the moon set times on the other one. This is when the moon starts to get out of your way over the next several days. Because here we are, we're moving back to where we really are. Here we are on the 17th. So this is a good time. The moon is...
So basically now we want to be later than those times, right?
This is when it sets, yeah. So as it's
not very bright.
As it's setting later and later, it's getting thicker and thicker. So it's getting worse and worse. So you're not really going to see anything until after 11 p.m. here. And then now the moon is just staying up and it's getting too thick. And this is less ideal. You can still see stars, but it's less ideal. So anyway, I think that's enough time spent on the moon.
Yep.
I know that Michael wanted to jump into some planets.
Yeah.
And so this is your planet diagram for January. here's tomorrow's lineup. This is where, as we're moving around, I'll get my pen back, so this should be helpful to people. This is planet Earth right here, third stone from the sun. Here's the sun, here's Mercury, here's Venus, and here's Earth. And then Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are labeled. And that's as far as you can really see with your naked eye. And so what I have here is a simulated horizon for me, because I'm in California. Here I am on the western coast. This is your North Pole looking down. So the Earth is spinning. You guys remember from the last time? Where does it become 9 a.m. first, on the East Coast or the West Coast?
East Coast.
Right, so we're spinning that way. Oops. Terrible drawing. We're spinning that way. So now I'm going to spin the Earth a little bit. But what I'm showing here is
our line of sight.
Yeah, this is your eastern horizon, and this is your western horizon. This is me in California looking out into the sky. Obviously, how wide that is depends on whether you're standing next to mountains. So if you're standing in a narrow canyon, those two lines are going to be practically a V, like that, right? That's all the sky you're going to see, like that. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yep.
Or if you're in a forest or some shit.
Right. If you're on a raft in the middle of the Pacific, those two lines are going to be practically straight out from each other, right? You'll see a huge sky. That's why they say big sky, like in Idaho. So now as we turn, yeah, so you guys probably have a big sky. So now as we rotate, that my field of view is going to rotate, and the Earth just rotated towards the east. Now I just brought Mars and Jupiter into view, right? So here we are, it'd be midnight if I was looking straight away from the Earth. If I rotated back a little bit further to where I was looking out straight away, sorry, not from the Earth, from the sun. This is midnight. So I'm showing, this is me looking up into the sky a little bit after midnight, because we've rotated a little bit to the east. But as we get closer, this eastern horizon, when the sun comes across that's morning. So you can see that Mars and Jupiter come into view before sunrise. So if you look up here, this screen up here is an observer looking out into the sky. You can see Mars and Jupiter before the sun comes up. This is when daylight starts to come into effect. So now as I keep turning, this is when the sun comes up. Now I won't be able to see Mars and Jupiter anymore, because now the sun is cresting that horizon, that eastern horizon. This is the eastern horizon right here.
Well, when Michael was looking at that app, you were showing us that, like, if we looked west and then we looked down below us, it seemed like all the planets and the sun were all in the same little area. So is that pretty rare that they're all sort of bunched in a little area like that?
Right. So these different configurations are what people who know a lot about astrology can tell you about, these different configurations that have different impacts on people on Earth. So when they're in a line, what basically impacts the Earth is when we have, like,
yeah, you're more into astronomy.
No, I know, but
yeah.
It's just, is that what you were seeing in your
but
app?
yeah,
Yeah.
So right now they are, from here we are on Earth, to see Mercury, we look that way. To see Mars and Jupiter, we look that way. So they're all in a pretty close spread. But look, Saturn, comes all the way around. Saturn can get to right here, right? Or Jupiter could get to right here, where they're totally opposite the sun from where we are, where we're seeing them in the middle of the night. Right now we're looking pretty much towards the sun to see all of them. And that's why I've made a kind of a big mess on the screen here, but that's why Mars and Jupiter are the main two planets that are easiest to see right now. You're not going to see Venus because
I have a question from the chat. It's asking what program you're using.
Great question. So this is just a screenshot that I took from a website called In the Sky. In the Sky. I think it's .org. And it actually has a slider up here that you can move, and you can watch the planets move around, and you can zoom in and zoom out. But I've taken a screenshot here, so it's not actually live. If I shared a different screen, I could go there and show you how it works. But that's a good question. inthesky.org. So, but the other question was, hey, is it kind of rare? Graham said, hey, look at all the planets are pretty closely clustered together, all the visible planets.
Well, it looked more so on the app that Michael was showing me beforehand. It looked more so like because we were looking down and we had this purview of the whole sky underneath us.
Yeah,
and
we got across like 4 zodiac signs.
Oh, that's about the same then, probably.
Yeah, what app are you using, Michael?
Oh, I don't know.
No, that looks like it matches then. If you look from Mars all the way to Jupiter, yeah.
I could show you on Stellarium, which is a different app that I could show you what you're talking about. But what that app is showing is you're able to see planets even when the sun is right there on an app.
Yeah.
But in real life, here's Venus. I'm drawing a line to Venus. Here's Earth. An observer on Earth right now cannot see Venus because Venus is drowned out by the light of the sun. So this thing up here does show where Venus is. It's like right there, but it's not going to be visible. Anything in this kind of bluish area is going to be very hard to see. So therefore, Mercury and Saturn are going to be hard to see. You can see them right before the sun comes up if you have a really good view to the eastern horizon. But what I'm trying to show here is that for people who want to go see planets, your best bet right now this time is Mars and Jupiter. See, as right now it's still nighttime. It's getting towards morning. You see, as I'm rotating the Earth, as I rotate it further, now that sunrise, now I won't see Mars or Jupiter or anything because the sun's coming up and drowning them out. So your best bets right now are as the Earth continues to rotate towards the east, Mars and Jupiter come into view before the sunrise, and then once the sun comes up, you're not going to see them. You're going to see Mars and Jupiter towards the east. So
you can always see them too in that nice, like fucking, almost like a 45 or a 55 degree angle from the moon, or from the sunrise coming up, or from the moon sometimes too, right?
That's right.
On that sort of plane.
That's the plane of the ecliptic. So all of this that we're talking about has to do with the model that I believe, which is that the Earth is going around the sun as part of this solar system. But what Darren just mentioned is this is the plane of the ecliptic. See how this is the sun coming up. Now I moved to a screen where this is from an app called Stellarium. This is a screenshot once again, but I've got Stellarium open. We can go to it live if you want to. I can show you the thing that Graham was talking about, where they're all clustered and you can see through the Earth. But
so does the moon follow that same plane?
It follows almost that exact same plane, not far from it. So the orbits are not exactly in a flat disk. So they are inclined slightly from one another. And that's why, by the way, we don't get a lunar eclipse every single month. But yes, the moon is going to come in on the same angle. And that's because what it is this plane that we're looking down on, that all these circles are on.
How weird is it that you can take the whole thing and put it in a plan view and it works?
Yeah, so now we're looking down on the North Pole of the Earth in this view. But when I go to here, now we're standing out in a forest somewhere, looking out at the sky, and we're in the northern hemisphere. If you look down here, you can actually see my coordinates. I'm in.
Is that your house? We can see your house.
Well, it's a fake horizon, but yeah, that's where I am. I'm in that town, Paso Robles, properly pronounced Paso de Robles, or de Robles, but we just say Paso Robles, just like we just say Los Angeles instead of Los Angeles. But this angle that you were talking about, guess what? It's going to be different at different parts of the Earth, different parts of that sphere. You're going to get a different angle at a higher horizon, a higher latitude. You're going to get a steeper angle than we are down further south. And if you're at the close to the equator, these guys are going to be going almost straight up over your head. Why? Because you're in the middle. You're down here. You're practically on that plane, and you're watching the plane. You're watching all the things that are on the plane go straight up as you're on this thing that's spinning, right?
Bingo, bango.
So it's hard to get your head around, but with a planetarium you can show it. So then I just moved forward a little further to show that Mars and Jupiter, right now, they're very close together from our perspective, but as we go further on in the month, they get a little bit more separation right here. So going back to this is what you can see in the morning. This is 7:30, right when the sun is coming up. So about an hour before this, when the sun is not in the sky, that's when you'll be able to see your Mars. It'll be slightly closer to the horizon, and Jupiter slightly farther from the horizon. And you can see why that is. See, here's my eastern horizon. I just moved it back in time. See how Mars is lower than Jupiter? It's, from our perspective, it's a slightly lower angle to Mars. I can draw it with a pen than to Jupiter, but they're pretty close together. So I look out here to see Mars. I look out here to see Jupiter. Jupiter is above the horizon by a little tiny bit more than Mars. Not much. See? Slightly. Oops.
Our angle would be steeper than that. For us, Jupiter would be probably like, closer up, like halfway between the tip of the house and the bottom of the robot's wand.
Right. I would call that a less steep angle, but you're right. It would be, I would say a steep angle would be coming straight up. But yeah, your slope is going to be down more like this.
My slope is higher.
Well, it depends on your southern horizon too. But somebody in Hawaii,
yeah, you're right. Maybe, yeah, you're right.
Somebody in Hawaii is going to see this whole disk of the solar system coming up more like this, straight up. The further towards the middle of the planet you go, the more you're in the middle of that disk. The best way to understand this is not to think about what's happening on the horizon. The best way is to think about what's happening at the North Pole. So I'm going to get back to, oops, I just messed that up, but let me go to, can you guys still see it?
No.
Okay, let me go to Stellarium. We're getting into a lot of celestial mechanics, and I do want to get into some myths, but we do have time. What time did we actually kick this thing off?
Like 45 minutes ago.
Okay, great. So let's just nail down these celestial mechanics a little bit, that because it really helps with the appreciation of what's going on. So now can you see my screen?
Yep.
My constellations? All right. So this is the direction that I'm normally looking when I'm looking for the zodiac. But to see the North Star, I'm actually going to bring in some grid lines. Can you see those?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm facing to the south right now. I'm imagining this is a planetarium app called Stellarium or Stellarium. I don't know how they pronounce it. It's free, it's online, it's open source, so that people who know how to code can go in there and add different things. I'm looking towards the south. I'm standing in the northern hemisphere. So the north celestial pole is actually behind my head. So as the Earth turns, it's turning towards the east, so the sky is going to look like it's going towards the west. As the hours go by, or I'm moving the minutes now, as the hours go by, we're actually rotating towards this letter E over here. We're standing on standing on a sphere that's zooming towards this eastern horizon. So if I turn and face east, as I'm doing right now, we're zooming towards that letter E. The ball that I'm on is actually spinning towards that E. So I'm going to start moving the hours. And that's what's making the constellations rise. It's actually us spinning. Just like if you're in a car and you're driving down the freeway and you're passing trees, they look like they're zooming towards the back of the car, or you're passing billboards. So as we move along, let me see if I can get the sun in here. Yeah, so we should have a sun. The sun should come up. Let me zoom. Everyone's familiar with, as we zoom towards the east, the sun rises in the east, and then it gets left behind. The eastern horizon keeps going, and it moves towards the west. So, with that in mind, if I turn towards the north, there is a point, there's a point that's above the North Pole that the whole sky seems to be turning around. So that,
it's more
if I could see
for the round Earth folk.
Well, I know they've got some way of explaining this, but it's explained very well by the fact that if we're on a sphere.
Spinning ball.
Okay, so the further north I go, the higher in the sky this point, this celestial point that everything turns around, is going to go in the sky. Until when I get to the North Pole, that's going to be directly overhead, 90 degrees up.
So if there was an axis going through the center of the Earth, it would be hitting that crosshair.
That's right. It's coming down from this. It's going through the North Pole, and we're all spinning on a ball that's going towards the letter E. So I'll make it look more like a ball. Flat Earth aficionados will say, see, he's making it look like a ball. But so what we're doing is we're on this thing that's spinning that way. So if I were to trudge towards the North Pole, that thing is going to get higher and higher. We've done this before, actually.
Yeah.
On this. See, if I go to Canada, if I find, where am I? Something on here that'll help me. Oh, I'm on the wrong menu. Sorry. If I go location, if I put myself up near the North Pole, that thing is going to get way up into the air. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if I was lying on the top of a sphere with my head right at the North Pole and it was night, the whole sky would be turning around that central point, and that central point would be right over my head because I'm on the top of the Earth. So let's go up there. Let's go up to Ellesmere Island or somewhere way up there. Where am I? I don't know where I am, but I'm up there. So look at how much higher the North Pole got. So now it's practically overhead because that's the North Celestial Pole, because I'm on the top of the Earth that's spinning. I'm practically underneath that point. So the sun is just going to kind of roll along the horizon. That's why you get a midnight sun north of the Arctic Circle. But if I come all the way down to Hawaii, or somewhere right near Hawaii's at 19 degrees north, but if I come all the way down to like the equator, let me go to Ecuador. That point is going to come all the way down to like the horizon, right? Here I am. Oh, I'm in Venezuela, or I'm somewhere near Venezuela. Look at that. I'm on the equator, and basically the middle of the sky is rotating straight up over my head. See? Here I'm actually in the southern, I got myself down into the southern hemisphere, or I'm very close to the southern hemisphere. I'm very close to the equator. So the sun, let's get the sun to rise. Here it is, it's 4 a.m. The sun's going to come up. Watch the angle that it comes up. It's going to come up from the east over here. East is over here because I'm looking towards the north now. I could turn back around and look towards the south. Look at that. I'm almost able to see the south celestial pole. So I'm just north of the equator right now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So now, if I'm looking towards the south the way I was before, let's see how steep the angle rise is for the sun and the planets. They should be coming up way steeper than they were when we were way up in the north. See, here comes some planets. This is a planet. This is a planet. It's probably actually Mars and Jupiter. That's probably Jupiter. Oh, no, that's Saturn. Oh, sorry. Here's Jupiter right here.
That's like
so
a super alignment.
See how much steeper they are?
Yeah.
So I would call that a steeper rising angle. And the farther north I go, I would say it's a less steep rising angle. So here comes the sun. And there it is. So it's going to go across the sky. That's why people in the tropics, you can get a much better tan. When I go to Hawaii, because the rays of the sun are still so much more direct on me down close in the tropics. But up in Canada, even if I lie out in the sun 8 hours a day in the middle of winter, the sun's going to be making a path across the sky like way narrow, way down here. It's going to be down close to the South Pole. I'm going to be getting a very steep angle of rays. Anyway, we're spending lots of time on celestial mechanics, not so much on myths, which I do want to get to, but hopefully that didn't confuse the issue. Hopefully that helped some.
Oh, that was a good visual. A good visual of.
I want to show one more thing. Thanks, Graham. I won't. Let me show you the grams. Let's take away we can see down through the Earth. Let me go back to a more familiar latitude for me. Now I'm back in California somewhere. Okay. But if I take away the ground, now I can see all the way down to the celestial South Pole. And if I move, I like to do this. If I move the sun to where it is at noon, and just look through different days, one day at a time, keeping the sun right about noon. So here's the sun. So we're looking out into the south. Here's your zodiac going by. And I'm going to move one day at a time. So now you can see all the stars and the planet. There goes the moon. The moon's going to zoom around once a month. Is this kind of what you were talking about, Graham?
Yep.
Where you can see, we're looking, this is noon, so we're looking straight at the sun. So you would not be able to see these planets at noon because they're too close to the sun, and the sun's up in the middle of the sky, and it's high noon, and the sky is bright blue. You're not seeing these planets. But if you could see the planets, you'd see, oh, they're all pretty close to the sun right now. That's a function of where they are on that solar system disk that I was showing before from the top-down view. So this is cool because you can see the sun moving through the zodiac as we go through the year. And it gets higher in the sky as we get to summer solstice, and it comes, which we just passed on this. We didn't just pass it where we are in real life right now, but that's your summer solstice. Now it's going back down further towards the south. So we can talk about that. Yeah, I love that. So let me now get us back to the presentation and get us into some myths. Just so that if this becomes too long of a video, I'm concerned that no one will want to tune in. So let me go back to share a different screen. But feel free to fire away with questions because, I think I could create a video where it's just me talking. It's the interaction that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, let's hammer
into different perspectives. Right on. So now I'll go back to sharing this screen. So which constellation, or trying to talk too fast, which planets you're able to see or what direction you see the planets is a function of where they are in their orbits. So sometimes the outer planets we'll have to look away from the sun to see them. If Saturn were right here and Jupiter were right here and Earth, well, it doesn't matter where as Earth is going around, if Earth were right here and we're spinning, we'd be seeing Saturn and Jupiter at night when we're turned away from the sun. But right now they're over here kind of we see them when we're turned more towards the sun. So we're going to see them either early in the morning, like we're seeing them right now, or if we were on this side, we'd see them late at night.
Cool.
It's you have to kind of wrap your head around it. I don't feel like I'm doing the most coherent job of explaining it, but hopefully it's semi-coherent to people.
Yeah, I think we're good.
So moving along we've just taken our way. We made it all the way through moon, meteors, planets. I did want to talk a little bit about cross-quarter days. What are those? And we were segueing into it a little bit with the showing the sun going through the equinox, the solstices, the equinoxes. We're coming up on an important day called a cross-quarter day. And I just wanted to introduce people who are not familiar with those. You guys know what a cross-quarter day is?
No.
It's pretty neat. So this is kind of a shorthand way of showing what's going on when we were outside in Graham's view that we were talking about. Let me just, for the sake of explaining what's going on, let me just go back to Stellarium because we've still got it in that configuration. Here we are looking at what the sun does at noon each day. As we move through the year, I've gotten us all the way up to August. Let me come back to February, or actually January. So you see the sun is actually pretty low in the sky at noon for us, and this is a northern hemisphere point of view. This is the sun at noon. It's pretty low, and it's coming up on, this is Sagittarius, this is Capricorn, this is Aquarius. Can you see my pointer?
Yep.
This is the fish of Pisces. This is Scorpio. So watch as we go through the different constellations. The sun is now in the background stars of Capricorn. That's the goat right there. January 29th. As we continue to proceed, the background stars will then be Aquarius. Notice that the sun is getting higher in the sky. It's climbing back up because what we're doing here, we're climbing out of the winter solstice. The winter solstice took place back here, December 21st. That's what we talked about last time with all the celebrations that are around winter solstice, including Christmas, but many others. There's your winter solstice. The sun is basically at its lowest point. I'm going backwards. I'm rewinding. Notice the sun is going down, lower, lower, lower. At some point, it reaches the winter solstice, the lowest point, and it turns around and starts coming back up. See how it's going higher now? See how it's getting higher up?
Oh, there it goes. Yep. If
I put the horizon back in, you'd see, the sun's getting higher above the horizon. oh, as it gets higher and higher, we're going to get more and more direct rays. Oh, it's going to heat up. It'll turn into summer. We take the ground back away. So as we proceed through the year, we're going to come up to Aquarius. The sun will have the background stars of Aquarius. And Pisces, this is where we're crossing. Actually, this 0 degree line right here, that's where we cross the equinox. So when the sun is below this 0 degree line, days are going to be shorter than nights. Hours of daylight shorter than hours of darkness. But eventually we get to a point where the daylight hours keep getting longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer, and then they're going to exactly balance out at the equinox. And so after that point, we're in the upper half of the year. Now days are longer than nights. See how the sun is getting higher up in the sky? That's the hours of daylight are longer and longer, and that's when it's starting to stay light out until like 9 p.m., 10 p.m.
So is a cross quarter day like halfway between the equinox and the solstice then or something?
Exactly. Bingo. More points for Graham. So
that's February 15?
Yeah, we're going to do the math on it right now. So let me show you so that you don't have to take my word for it. I'll show you how you calculate that.
It's kind of like an eighth of a year, I guess, right?
Right. So that's right. So here is how we normally think of dividing up the year. So this diagram is simply an easy way of showing what I just showed you as if we were standing outside looking at the sky. This is showing the sun moving through the year, through these are the background stars that you see. This is Aries. So the way I've oriented this diagram, you could orient it in any different way you want. You could put 12 o'clock wherever you want, but I like to put the summer solstice up here, the winter solstice down here. So this is the shortest day of the year. This is when the sun is lowest in the sky. This is the longest day of the year. This is when the sun is highest in the sky. These then would be, these two X's would be what? Halfway between. Equinoxes. That's when we cross over from everything below the line. Nights are going to be longer. Hours of darkness will be longer than hours of daylight. But everything above the line, hours of daylight, will be longer than. So daylight is going to dominate up here once we cross the spring equinox. Once we get to the fall equinox, we've passed down in the lower half again. Hours of darkness will be longer than hours of daylight. So we can divide the year into this four great quadrants using these four big stations. The two equinoxes, here's one equinox, here's the other equinox. That's quartering up the year into quarters, but then we can hash the quarters in half and have cross-quarter days. So as Graham already thinking ahead said, we must be halfway between. So here's generally when the calendar is actually engineered in order to try and keep it on those days. It slips around a little bit. That's why we have leap years. Slips around because we don't turn exactly the same number of turns to get back to the exact same point in the sky. That's a sidetrack. But it's not always exactly on March 21st. It brings it back with a leap year. So, but setting that aside, don't get confused with that. How many days do we have between March 21st and June 21st? Well, you can pull out a calendar and figure it out, but it's basically 10 days to the end of March. Then you add 30 more days for all of April. That's 40.
Is it like 91 and a quarter?
92 days. Yeah, that's right. Because see, these numbers aren't exact. So it's actually going to be 92 days on this one, 93 days on this one. So good math on. So I can see who's the engineer in the room. That's Darren. So if I wanted to divide these 92 days and find a cross-quarter day, where would I find it? How many days?
46.
Exactly. So what's 46 days from the equinox? Well, 10 days from March 21st to March 31st. That's 10. Then 30 days for the month of April. That's 40. Then we need 6 more days. So the cross-quarter day in that quadrant, bingo. So that's your cross-quarter day.
If it was on Cinco de Mayo, those motherfuckers would go crazy.
Well, that's the interesting thing is you find a lot of holidays clustered around these, and they often move them to the first of the month. So May 1st is a big holiday around the world. Even before you had the, communist May Day is always on May 1st. But for centuries before that, you had May Day in England where people would get out the maypoles and go a-maying. And then all the Puritans really hated that, and they started to chop down the maypoles and outlaw May Day, etc. So that's the cross-quarter day for that quarter. So you can do that same exercise. I won't do the math each time to find cross-quarter days for each of these. That one is actually
this year?
It's for any year.
Oh, it's the same every year.
So it's Beltane.
Well, that one is Beltane. These are the
Samhain.
Yep. So Samhain is actually. Do you know which quarter that one falls in?
It's in October, right? So it would be on
that's
the
one.
Opposite of Beltane.
Yeah, that's right. So Bel is a European name for the sun god. Well, not just European, because there's lots of other L words for the sun. Helios, Elios in Greek mythology. Helios has that same L sound.
L is God too, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
Elohim.
That's right. Elohim, correct.
Israel.
Correct. All those are L sounds. Well, so Saturn, right, is a Latin name for that god who is also called El or Elis in some different languages from the Mediterranean area. So, but anyway, moving through the cross-quarter days, let me see if I can move this stuff out of my way. There we go. Okay. I got stuff in the way.
Kind of stuff.
I've got my face, my little window of my screen.
Oh, digital.
Yeah. So our cross quarter day in February is around what, the 5th or something, 6th?
That's right. So I'm going to put them all in.
Oh, okay.
Let me get back to my.
Because that's what I was going to ask: is if there was like ancient holidays around this cross quarter, like did they recognize that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the cross quarters are definitely, and I'll show you some proof that they're very ancient in a moment. So here's the cross quarter day between June and September. Not too many people know about this one anymore, but that one's associated with. So Luch Nasad. Actually, that word Luch sounds a little bit like loaf. Yeah, loaf or lug. I think there's a deity named Lug, but I think it has to do with the loaf of bread. There's a lot of bread imagery because this is the harvest time. This is the constellation Virgo, and she's associated with wheat and gathering in the wheat. She's got her brightest star, Spica. You can look this up. It's very common knowledge. Like you'll find it even on Wikipedia that Spica is associated with a spike of wheat. So I believe that this cross-quarter day is associated with bread, wheat, making, the harvest festival time. Then after September 22nd, that's the next quarter day. That's the equinox, the fall equinox. Then when we go down into the lower part of the year, after that is when we get Halloween, and that cross-quarter day is actually, as you can see there, if you do the calculation, it's around November 8th. But like I said, a lot of these holidays migrate to the first of the month. So sometimes they're celebrated on November 1st. So that's where you have All Saints Day. The night before that is Halloween. But the
isn't your Thanksgiving? No, your Thanksgiving's at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, it's the third Thursday, I believe, in November. But yeah, so we have these different remnants or memories of these cross-quarter days. Let me just show you the one. Oops. The next one is, this is the one that we're coming up on. So Imbolc has to do with the shearing of the lambs, because we're coming up on the next thing that's going to happen is the March equinox, which is when we're in Aries. But there's also when I guess you shear lambs, or but this is where we have things like Groundhog Day. It's like we're halfway between winter and spring. So this is when we have kind of the crossover between winter and spring. And that's why Groundhog Day has all these traditions about, well, is it going to be 6 more weeks of winter or whatever, if the groundhog sees its shadow. So those cross-quarter days are interesting for a number of reasons, but it divides the year up into not just the vertical cross, but also a horizontal cross. And you can think of lots of symbols that use, like there are flags, like Norway's flag or England's flag. The St. George cross is just a white flag with a red cross on it. Then they made it into they put in the St. Andrew's cross, which is that X. So you can think of symbols that have both of these crosses on it. Like if you listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, right?
This life is more than just if you listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement.
Yeah, I've got their symbol way down here somewhere. I got to remember what slide to come back to. But that symbol that they use is that same 8-pointed, right? There it is. Oh, screen sharing has stopped.
No, you're cool. It just looks weirder. Looks different. But...
Can you see it? Yeah, okay. So let me go back to, where was I? Let's get back to our cross-quarter days. Right here. Go back to our screen. So cross-quarter days, there are ancient monuments that are lined up with solstices, sunrises, and sunsets. There are ancient monuments that are lined up with equinoxes, sunrises, and sunsets. But there are also ancient monuments that are lined up with cross-quarter days, which is how we know that these cross-quarter days were important even thousands of years ago. There are some in the Americas. There are some chambers and stones that are alignments. There's one in New Hampshire that I visited that has a stone that is lined up with this the sunrise for the February cross-quarter days. But the one that I'm going to show you is... This one for sure is in Ireland. So this is a screenshot of a page from a book that was published in 1983 called The Stars and the Stones. It's a wonderful book. I think it's out of print, but you can find the whole thing in different used bookstores. You can find it online at archive.org. But this shows how the ancient monuments would do standing stones. You can see in these diagrams here, if you have a place where you've got a central stone, and then it's going to cast different shadows as the sun does that movement between the lowest point, winter. This is looking east, by the way. This is where your sun is. Where you're standing, the sun, these angles will be different based on where you are on our round planet, but the swing between these two, it'll get more extreme the farther up you go, because in the Arctic Circle, it's going to get really extreme, but you're going to get a different shadow. So these are the stones you would need to mark out the quarter days. You put a stone here where the shadow is on the equinox, put a stone here where the shadow is on the sunrise at the summer solstice. Put a stone here where the shadow it'll get all the way up to here before it turns back around and goes back towards the winter solstice. Everyone tracking there?
Yeah, and then the small scale of that would be the daily sort of telling the time, right?
You mean to track it to the next cross quarter or whatever?
No, just tracking the day.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, yeah, during the day. So what's going to happen is on the
kind of sort of if you use summer solstice as sunrise and winter solstice as sunset, it would sort of be your times. That's kind of a macro and micro.
What you're asking about is like a sundial.
Yeah, that's right.
Just telling the time by this. What's going to happen is this sun is going to go over our head. So this is sunrise. So here's the sun, it's casting this shadow from this gnomon. This is called a gnomon. There's your gnomon at the center of your sundial. I put a letter G. The sun casts this shadow. This is like at, sunrise. But as the sun goes over, what's going to happen to that shadow? It's going to move that way, right? Until at sunset, when it's sinking back down over here, you're going to have a shadow that's pointed that way for sunset. Is that tracking, guys? Is my scribbles making sense?
Yep.
The shadows are going to go that way. And they're actually going to be very long in the morning. They're going to be shortest at noon, and they're going to be long again at night, right before the sun goes down. So yes, this is how you tell time with a sundial or just sticks in the ground. You can figure out where true north is by just putting a stick in the ground. Those are like survival skills. You can figure out, okay, well, halfway between there, that's my, you can figure out, there's little techniques to figure out which way is north that people who are, outdoors people can tell you about. But anyway, not to get too sidetracked, you can also put in your cross-quarter day markers. You can do it with stones. You can also do it with chambers. So this is from this great book, which I recommend everybody to check out. It's from 1983 by Martin Brennan, from page 39, showing you, here's how you put up stones for your quarter days. Here's how you put up stones for the cross-quarter days. But in these magnificent ancient sites in Ireland.
So that's why they're always on flat fucking spots, because that's tough to do these days for the average person. Like, you couldn't go do that in your backyard.
It is tough to do it in your backyard, unless you're like putting chalk on your fence or something, because the shadow is going to get, unless you happen to live on a lot of land, the shadow will probably run into your neighbor's property before it, before you reach the end of the shadow. So I'm just, let's kind of push along a little bit, but you can also do, instead of doing stones, you can do a chamber. And that's what, you find these in the Americas, and you find them in all parts of the world. You find them in Malta. They're beautiful. These chambers where the sunbeam, what he's showing here is the sunbeam coming in. This beam right here, this is a top view of a chamber that's in a mound in Ireland. This one is at a place called Loucrew. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. All the listeners in Ireland are now laughing. They're saying, oh, listen to that guy trying to say Loucrew. But Loucrew has these mounds, and one of the mounds, the mound that's in Cairn L or Mound L, has a chamber that lets in the sunrise on that cross-quarter day. It's actually going to let in the sunrise on both cross-quarter days, both the opposite cross-quarter days, because if you think about it, the sun is going, are you guys still there?
Yep.
The sun is going to go basically from, let's start at equinox, as it goes down towards the winter solstice. It's going to pass, the shadow is going to pass through here all the way to the winter solstice. Then it's going to come back. So it's going to pass the halfway point once on the way down, once on the way back up. But what we're basically passing through now is on the way back up. Does that make sense?
Yep. And it's a good
thing
too.
People who are really interested in this, yeah, it's a good thing. Going back towards summer. Except in the southern hemisphere, it's going towards winter.
Yeah, their fucking winters are like barely winters.
No, it gets cold.
Maybe in the Antarctica. Yeah, they still come to Canada.
All right.
Minus fucking
anyway,
40.
So this is a really cool chamber where the sun comes in just on this one day. It hits this standing stone right here. This is the side view of what you're seeing in this book by Martin Brennan. This is the top view. The sun comes in. It hits that one standing stone just on that day that's coming up, the cross-quarter day, the February cross-quarter day. This is what it looks like coming in. So these stones are numbered. These are the stones up here are the stones on this wall over here with this standing stone right here. And I'm going to show you a photograph of that. right there. So this is that standing stone. So this is that standing stone right here that the sun comes in and hits at La Cruz on those 2 cross-quarter days. The main point of bringing in these ancient chambers, La Cruz is really ancient. Have you guys heard of Newgrange?
Yep.
Newgrange is a little more famous than La Cruz. It's a bigger mound. It's got a really, really deep tunnel. Like their tunnel goes in, I forget, something like 120 feet. So it's a way deeper tunnel. But La Cruz is thought to be about 800 years older than Newgrange. And Newgrange is thought to have been constructed around 3000 or 3200 BC. So 3200 BC for Newgrange, another 800 years older for La Cruz puts it at like 4000 BC. So that means something was constructed for cross-quarter days in 4000 BC, and you've got one coming up. So anyway, they were paying attention to cross-quarter days in ancient times. We should probably just, be familiar with cross-quarter days. They're cool.
That's and you like can go a quarter of a procession ago.
Oh man, it's more than that because a quarter of a full procession. I was thinking you were meaning like an age. So we go through different ages every time procession takes us through one sign, which is about 2,160 years. So that's like 6,000 years ago. That's like the full thing is like 25,920 at the current rate of procession, 25,920. But yeah, you're right. So you're right, Darren. It's a quarter of a full procession. Okay.
A great
quarter
season.
of a great year.
A great season.
Yeah.
Do we say it was spring? Is it spring or fall? Please say spring.
I think we're coming out of the dark time. Yeah. So I just show you the La Cruz complex. I'll show you where that mound is. The one that is marked to the cross-quarter day that we're coming up on is Mound L right there. I'll zoom in on it a little bit. There's Cairn L. I had to turn the picture upside down to line it up with the map, but there's the sunrise on that day is going to come right in this and go into the chamber that's underneath this mound. I think these are sheep grazing around. Pretty cool, huh? So anyway,
there needs to be a Grimerica crop circle in that motherfucker.
Yeah, I think we should go have a Grimericon in Ireland. That'd be really cool. A meetup in Ireland, and we could get, there's people in Ireland are really attuned to these things, and they could tell us how to pronounce these things the right way, and they could tell us about some of these fantastic. But this is like one of the most well-preserved ancient sites on Earth is La Cruz. In terms of, it says right here, as a laboratory for the study of megalithic science, the region is unsurpassed. Probably the best preserved example of a Neolithic landscape in the world. Anyway, that's what Martin Brennan said in that book that I'm quoting. All right, so...
Isn't James Swagger in Ireland?
Yep.
We could go meet up with him. He could run it. Take us on a tour.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have contacted me from Ireland that I haven't had an opportunity to meet them in person, but it would be wonderful to do that someday. And I'd love to go to the Boyne River Valley, which is where all those are, but I have not been yet. So I'm just showing you pictures from the internet. But I thought it would be helpful for illustrating cross-quarter days. All right, what do we have, 5 minutes now for the myths? We've been going for what? Long time.
Hour 23.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's talk about the stars that you can see right now. So we've talked about when the moon is out of the way, when's the best time to see them, what planets you can see in the morning, where we are in terms of the equinoxes and solstices. We're halfway between the winter solstice, halfway to the spring equinox. And here's what you're basically seeing for an observer in the northern hemisphere. I've got us in California right here. But it's not that much different for where you guys are. Your southern horizon is going to be a little bit higher up. It's going to obscure some of these, but you're still able to see Orion. You're still able to see the brilliant star Sirius right here. I'm going to put in some labels for you. But this is what we can see at about 7 p.m. And we'll continue. The sky is going to continue to rotate towards the west as the night goes on. But you've got some really amazing constellations and my research ties them into the myths. This is where I'm really most comfortable talking, is the connections between the stars and the myths. But let me show you, before we get into the myths, let me show you there are some really cool features out in the sky that you might want to check out. We may have mentioned some of these in other interviews or conversations or chats that we've had, but right now you've got these really bright stars of Orion's belt. You've got the Pleiades up here. Remember, Graham, we were talking about the Pleiades like two skies over Grimerica ago. And you've also got the Beehive cluster coming up over here in Cancer the Crab, which is in between the twins of Gemini and Leo the Lion. So I'll bring that up in a minute. Those three are really cool to look at if you've got a clear sky. And I'm mostly into naked eye astronomy, meaning I don't use a telescope, don't use binos. I'm connecting the myths to the full constellations most of the time. But if you want to use binos, these are three brilliant features that will really delight you if you can go out in the dark and look at these three features. So this one's the Pleiades. This is in Orion's belt. We've got a nebula, and then we've got a special cluster of stars in Cancer the Crab that I'm going to show you how to find. And there's their names. The Beehive cluster and the Pleiades are probably the coolest to look at. The Orion Nebula is beautiful to look at, but it doesn't have as many stars in it. It's just got more colors. But if you've got a powerful telescope, it becomes even more and more amazing to look at. But all these are really good to look at with binos. So I'm going to zoom in on each one and just tell you how to find them. Are you guys pretty familiar with Orion?
Yep.
Orion's belt. Most people, that's if they know any constellations, they know the stars
just off of Orion's
That's right.
belt. Yeah.
That's right. You bought it for your wife.
Owns it. Yeah.
So
Cheap, really.
In fact, you said it was in the sword that's hanging down, right?
That's right. I wonder if that little planet of aliens running knows I just fucking own them.
Yeah, it's not a sword.
A little Freudian. Graham's getting Freudian.
So actually, the myths use those sorts of things a lot. The myth
fallacies.
If you've read the myths, when you read them as a child, you're like, oh, these myths are fantastic. And then when you read the unexpurgated version of the myths as an adult, you're like, oh my goodness, they're so violent and they're doing all kinds of, it's like everybody's having sex with everybody else in these myths. That's because they're using constellations. They're using metaphors that are like what we experience here on Earth. They're bringing the stars down to us to explain. But some of the constellations do have more sexual connotations to them. But anyway, setting that aside for now, let's go to how to find these beautiful features if you want to look at them. If you've got some good binoculars, you can see Orion Nebula, Beehive Cluster, and Pleiades. The Pleiades, you just go straight up from the Orion's belt, and also I use the V-shaped Hyades. I'm going to show you how to get to those. I forget which one I show you first. Okay, so this is the Beehive Cluster. I'm zooming in on the Beehive Cluster, so let me go back. This is the twins of Gemini. They're actually pretty bright, and the way you find the twins is by going up through the shoulder of Orion. This is Betelgeuse. So these two stars are not the twins. They're also very bright, but they're basically straight up overhead from Orion. Between the twins and Leo the Lion's rising in the east. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. Between the twins of Gemini, right here, and Leo the Lion, that's how you find the Beehive Cluster, because it's very hard to actually see the outline. This is Cancer the Crab right here. It's actually pretty hard to see that constellation. That's supposed to be an arrow. Whoops, arrow's getting worse. That's Cancer the Crab.
More like a phallus.
Yeah, sorry. It's supposed to be an arrow.
Now we have to change the rating on the video, Dave.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you thrown off. YouTube for Michael. Michael seems to want to get thrown off YouTube. So anyway, there's an arrow. Anyway, Cancer the Crab is actually a super, look at how faint all these stars are that make the outline of Cancer the Crab. It's much easier to just basically look in front of the lion's mouth. It's supposed to be a straight line. In front of the lion's mouth, that's where we get the beehive cluster. That's why in ancient artwork, a lot of times you'll see a bee coming out of the mouth of a lion. Or we've talked about the Samson myth. He takes honey out of the mouth of a lion. So if you go halfway between the lion
and Cancer,
the twins of Gemini, and the twins of Gemini, these are the twins of Gemini, that's where you'll find Cancer. Let me erase those lines. That's where you find the beehive cluster. Let me show you. The beehive cluster is right there in the head of Cancer the Crab. I've got some videos and actually blog posts that tell you exactly how to find it, but basically, if you look in front of the mouth of the lion,
yeah, I got it right here. Yeah.
It's like a blur. So now I'm going to zoom in even more. You can see there's actually hundreds of stars in this cluster. And the way to see it best is with binoculars. But first you have to find it with the naked eye, then you point your binoculars in the right direction. But it's basically in front of the mouth of the lion. Can you see the mouth of the lion right over here?
Yep.
Right. So going in front of the mouth of the lion, halfway between the lion and the twins of Gemini. You probably won't see Cancer the Crab unless you really know it. But with binoculars, you can see all these stars in the cluster. And with binoculars, you can see these two stars that are on either side of the beehive cluster in Cancer the Crab. You can see those with binoculars pretty easily. All right, so moving along, I would recommend binoculars that have, if you're in the market for binoculars, really, you can get some decent binoculars for under $50. 10 by 50, that stands for wide angle. This is the kind of binoculars I use right here. My parents got me some of these for Christmas. I'm already loving them. And you can use it to see the beehive cluster very well. So, moving along, the Orion Nebula. Here's Orion without the lines. Can everybody see Orion?
Yep.
Who can make out Orion?
I think I can see that star of mine.
You probably can on this. Here's the belt stars right here. So his shoulders are up here. His legs are down here. This is his foot. This is Rigel, a very bright star. This is Betelgeuse, a pretty bright star that's orange. He has a very faint stars for his head. His head is up here, and he has his outstretched arm here and upraised arm here. But here's your belt stars, and then he has a sword hanging down from his belt. We'll see that in some other myths from other cultures later on. I'm going to try and hurry and get to them. I'm trying to draw an arrow, doing a terrible job. That's the Orion Nebula right there. Everybody good?
Yep.
That's fun to look at with binoculars. I was looking at that last night.
That's one that's super easy for everyone to find.
It seems
too.
like it's
if you're
always
looking for
there,
a good beginner one, the Orion one should be. If you can't find Orion, then you should start over.
Well, yeah, I've got some blog posts and things that tell you how to find Orion, but look for those 3 belt stars. And then our next one, you basically go in the northern hemisphere, you're going to go up along the line of those belt stars. You will get to, there's the belt stars, you'll get to this V-shaped, this is a distinctive V. We'll see it again later. This distinctive V is halfway between the belt and the Pleiades. So that's how you find your Pleiades from the belt. Go up the belt to this V. There's the V right there. This is the Pleiades. I'm going to zoom in for people to see. Can you see this V? These are pretty bright stars right here that I'm trying to highlight.
Oh, there's
Yep.
Yeah. So here's Orion. Here's his 3 belt stars. They basically point you towards that V, or you can think of him reaching out with this arm kind of towards that V. This is the V-shaped Hyades. It's spelled Hy. I should have put it up here. Hyades. I'll just put an H for the Hyades, spelled like Hyades. Oops. Hyades. No, forget that.
I was high in the 80s.
Yeah, high 80s. Yeah, you were high in the 80s. There's the Pleiades right there, and they're really brilliant. And that actually will give you probably the best results. You can see them with the naked eye. If you look at them with binos, you're going to see some really brilliant. So there you can see the V. Can you see the V right here?
Yeah.
So there's your 3 stars of Orion's belt, and he's got an hourglass shape. By the way, I'm saying all these constellations can play both a male or a female character in different myths. This is the V, an important V-shaped, that's the jawbone of the bull in Taurus. It's very easy to see, actually. 3 stars, V, then you've got the Pleiades. Now I'm going to zoom in. Look at those Pleiades. This is the V. This is how beautiful the Pleiades look. With some binos, you can see all these stars. Sometimes they're called the 7 sisters. It's way more than 7 stars in there, but they're these very bright stars. There's many myths associated with these stars, but I'm not going to get into those right now. I would just recommend that people try and go out and look at the Pleiades. And if you can get some binoculars, 10 by 50 are the best. 10x50 are the best for stargazing. But Pleiades will be well worth the effort. So will the Beehive, and so will the Orion Nebula. So now, getting into the myths a little bit, just in the interest of time. There's the V-shaped Hyades. That's the head of the bull. So this is the way I like to envision Taurus the bull, is by taking the V, and if you extend out, there's 2 stars here that basically give you the ends of his 2 long horns. So it's like a longhorn bull. Can you see how that looks like kind of the head of a bull?
Yep.
I'll draw the top. There's his head. There's his horns. See? Here's his eyes would be down here. His ears would stick out here. And there's his horns. Everyone good?
Yep.
Because that's going to be important. That's going to be important. So there's the head of the bull. Now I want to talk about a myth from India.
Was that the bull over there with the bat? He's going to clobber that dragon, lion?
Yeah, so that's a goddess riding on a lion. So this is the goddess Durga from India. So the goddess Durga fights this monster called Mahishasura. Mahish, they usually don't pronounce in Hindi. They don't pronounce that last A most of the time, so you'll hear it pronounced Mahishasur. So Mahishasur is this powerful figure like a minotaur who's got the body of a man and the head of a bull. An asur is like a powerful demon. It's kind of like they have angels and demons. The asur are on the demon side. They're usually like abusing their power. And the Devis, and they have all these other, the Devis, D-E-V-I, kind of like a diva. Those are the good ones. But anyway, she fights this asur, Mahishasur. He becomes more and more powerful, and he starts like just tyrannizing the whole earth. And so the gods say, what are we going to do about this? And they say, I know, we'll have Durga take care of Mahishasur. And they each give her a weapon. She has 10 different arms, and she has these different weapons, and she slays Mahishasur. But what I want you to see, and we're going to talk about that, myth because it's really easy to see right now, and I think it also demonstrates something that I've been talking about lately that's a really important concept that we'll get to in a second.
So is she going to be Orion, if I was guessing?
That's right. So here's the goddess Durga. Here's Mahishasur. So she's riding on a lion. We just saw a lion. So Darren is jumping ahead and saying, wait a minute, maybe one of these lines up with Orion. Which one do you think would line up with Orion?
Leo.
Let's just take a look. Let's just take a look at the outline of Orion, and then look back at this sculpture, which is from India. Look at the outline of. Look at the outline of Orion. Oh, come on, guys. All right. Let me tell you why I don't think it's the chick with the bow. Which she's a goddess, so we better probably not say that. Better say the goddess with the bow. Durga. The goddess Durga. Durga with a G. Yeah. She fights Mahishasur. Now let's look at the outline of Mahishasur and compare it to Orion.
I thought he was the bull, though.
Good point. Okay, that's a very good point. The way she slays him is she cuts off his head. So, does Orion have a very visible head? No. But nearby to Orion, we just saw a bull with long horns, right? Yes. So she cuts off. Yeah. So look at the knee of Orion. Look at the knee of Mahishasur. In the way the sculptor from hundreds of years ago has made the knee of Orion. The knee of Mahishasur. You see that? Can you see that they're in the exact same posture right here, or very similar? He's got this knee bent. Orion's got this knee bent.
Yep.
Everyone good?
Yeah, except he's holding his club in his other hand as opposed to like way above his head.
Okay, right. But look at this. So we'll get to the club in a second.
So is Taurus next door then?
Yes, Taurus is right next to Orion. So look at this though. You see how this sculptor has a long sash hanging down from the belt of Mahishasur? You see that?
Yeah.
See all these dangling sashes? That lines up with the belt or the sword, or maybe it's a sash hanging down from the belt of Orion. And then Graham says, wait a minute, that guy's wielding a baseball bat or a bowling pin or a club. Orion is also wielding a club. We used a little bit of license here, but it is in the same hand. So he's holding it in this hand. So I would argue that Mahishasur is Orion with the head of the bull. Let me go back. Let me see if I can just go forward. Yeah. So there's Orion. There's the head of the bull. So she cuts off the head of Mahishasur. Orion doesn't have a very clear head. So that's what I believe is the foundation for this myth. And I'll show you some more clues that make it even more convincing that this is probably the right explanation. And the reason that I'm talking about this particular myth at this time of year, I chose it for the month of January for us, is we're seeing Orion and Taurus, the bull, that V-shaped Hyades with his horns. We're seeing them pretty high in the sky, but still on the eastern side of the sky at 7 p.m. But as we keep going across the sky, they're going to start moving toward, as we keep going through the night, they're going to move across the sky towards the west. And this is a special subset of myths that I've started calling dual horizon myths. They're myths where one set of players goes down into the western horizon while another set comes up from the east. And a lot of times, the ones that are sinking down will be slain or killed by the ones that are rising up. So I just made a long video about this. But this one, you can really see it at this time of year. There's other examples of this myth that you can't really see so well at this time of year, like Perseus slaying Medusa is another dual horizon myth. But right now, even though Perseus, he's right here, he's high in the sky, Medusa is totally out of the sky. You can't see her right now. So this is not a good time to talk about Medusa, but this is a good time to talk about Mahishasur. So what's going to happen is as these guys keep moving across the sky, Durga is going to start riding on her lion. So there's a lot of goddesses in mythology who ride on lions. So here we have Leo the lion. So I've turned a little bit towards the east. And a really easy way to find Leo the Lion at this time of year, if you go out, the other constellation that people are pretty familiar with, if they're not familiar with too many constellations, they will know the 3 stars of Orion's belt, and they'll know the Big Dipper. So if you guys have been going out and looking at the Big Dipper, we'll see that in the, like, this is 9 p.m. I'm showing 9 p.m. The Dipper is like standing straight up. Can you see the Big Dipper? Can everyone see the Big Dipper right here? It's like it's hanging from a hook in your kitchen, and the hook is on the side of the bowl of the Dipper, and the handle is hanging down. Well, the Dipper and Leo the Lion kind of fit together like 2 puzzle pieces. See that? So the back of Leo, this is Leo. Oops, let me get my pen back. This is Leo. This is his head. This is his mane. This is his back. His back will kind of line up like a puzzle piece. So if you can see the Dipper standing straight up, you know that Leo is rising straight up from the east. As the sky keeps turning around, remember we looked at the North Pole, the Dipper is circling around the pole. Leo is going to go across the sky, staying like a gear. It's like 2 gears. As the Dipper goes across, Leo goes across. So here's Leo rising in the east. I've turned our view a little bit towards the east. This is the head of Virgo, the Virgin, coming up right behind Leo. That's the constellation that I'm convinced plays the goddess Durga. Okay, she plays a lot of other goddesses. Virgo plays a lot of other goddesses. She can also play male characters too. So you'll see gods who are in the distinctive outline of Virgo, the constellation. Are you guys still there?
Yep.
Yeah, what is the Pleiades in this myth?
They're not so much part of this one. That's a good question, Michael. But they are part of some other myths that are in the same region. Like I talk about, there's a story of Balaam. There's a figure named Balaam in the Old Testament who has a talking donkey. His donkey talks to him. It's actually called Balaam and the Ass in the King James Version. If you read the King James Bible, it's in the book of Judges. In the Pleiades, if you search my blog, you can search for Balaam, Balaam, and read a big, long explanation of that myth of Balaam. And the Pleiades play a role in that one. But they don't play a role in this particular one. It's a good question, as far as I've found so far. But let me show you Virgo rising. So here's Leo, there's the Big Dipper. Here comes Virgo as the night continues to progress. So now here we are at 11:30. You can see Virgo coming up behind Leo. That's why goddesses will often be riding on a lion or standing on a lion, or they'll be sitting on a throne. They'll have a lion or 2 lions right in front of them. I'm going to argue that Virgo plays the role of the goddess Durga. And a good way to spot Virgo, so she's coming up later at night or early in the morning. This little constellation, Corvus the Crow, is a really cute little constellation, is looking right towards her brightest star, Spica. This star right here is called Spica, and the crow is looking right at that like it's a jewel that he wants to go grab in his beak or something. So you can see Virgo early in the morning. If you get up at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., you'll see Virgo rising up into the sky behind Leo the Lion. This constellation Hydra, this really long serpent, I'm pointing it out because it can be important for Durga. And there's also this constellation Crater the Cup on the back. That's not as important for this particular myth. But here's they still celebrate every year. This is a very big festival in India and in Hindu cultures. They celebrate Durga. Her festival is actually in October because that's when the sun is rising in Virgo. I think that's another clue that Durga lines up with Virgo. But can you see she's holding a cobra snake right here?
Yep.
From her hand. So the reason I said they still celebrate it each year, this is an actual shrine from a Durga celebration. These are all over India during this 10-day festival that happens in October. every year. But you can see how she's got her lion next to her. She's actually slaying the head of the bull right here. She's got this wicked looking weapon where she's poking it into the forehead of this buffalo, water buffalo, and you can see blood running down. This is actually the outline of a buffalo head right here. That's his snout. That's his horns. It's kind of hard to see, but that's a buffalo head. But she's also holding in one hand a cobra snake.
The Hydra?
Exactly. If you go back to
He's got
Hydra.
a bent knee again, too.
Who's he?
Orion, I guess.
The guy that's getting slayed
guy,
by the weapon?
Yeah. So this guy, he's actually holding up the water buffalo. I don't really know who this guy is in terms of the mythology. I would actually argue that he probably lines up with Boötes. See how he does have a bent knee, but look at this constellation right here that's sitting right here. Can you see that guy?
Yeah.
This is the herdsman. See how he's got it's like he's seated or he's kneeling. In a lot of myths, he's kneeling. He's often hanging out with Virgo. Sometimes he is Virgo's lover because he's basically sitting in her lap. In the Bible, there's a lot of Abraham and Sarah are sporting together, and the Pharaoh looks out the window and says, "Wait a minute! I thought you said she wasn't your wife, and you guys are sporting together." That's how they translate it, meaning they're having romantic liaisons together. He looks out the window and says, "Wait a minute, she is your wife." That's because often Boötes is Virgo's lover. Anyway, not to get too sidetracked, I think that figure probably lines up with that constellation. Oh, it's a good. We could debate that. It's a good thought on Darren's part, but I would say that's probably a Boötes figure. But let's focus in on the ones that are pretty certain. See how Hydra even has a hood? Like it looks like a cobra. Also, the lion, but also over here we have this peacock. See this peacock? Whoops. See this peacock over here? So Durga, this is an ancient epic, the Mahabharata. That's how I'm told you pronounce it, Mahabharata, not Mahabharata like it's spelled, Mahabharata or Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, it even says all these characteristics of Durga. This is when, in the myth, they put their hands together and say this hymn, and Durga appears. And this is Arjun is calling out for help to Durga, and he starts saying all her attributes. And some of her attributes are that she bears a banner of peacock plumes. So this is in an ancient scripture. She bears a banner of peacock plumes. She also has, she's got all these other attributes, some of which match up with constellational aspects. But the main one that I wanted to point out here, she's the younger sister of the chief of cowherds. I would argue that is born in the race of the cowherd Nanda. That's actually, once again, back to this constellation right here. Boötes is the herdsman. But that peacock plume is, I would argue, this constellation right here that's called Coma Berenices. It looks like a flag or a feather duster or something. And you see it in ancient sculptures sometimes in Hindu iconography as a little whisk. I wish I had some other ones to show you, but that's her banner of peacock plumes. You see it in other myths too. So sometimes there'll be a goddess who has a peacock next to her. I think this Coma Berenices lines up with peacock plumes. This is another ancient sculpture of Durga. You can see some of her weapons are broken off, but she's slaying this bull. She's got the lion next to her, and around her neck, she has a cobra snake.
Cool.
So to now bring it back to what you can see in the night sky, look what's happening here. As we go through the night, now it's 1 a.m., who's sinking down into the west? Orion with his bull head over here. Who's rising up to take over the night sky? Durga with her lion. So I would call this an example of a dual horizon myth, where the one who is being banished or slain is sinking down, and the one who is conquering or triumphing is rising up. And so you can see that really nicely at this time of year, because we've got Orion so dominant in the sky at like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, even 9 o'clock. But as the night wears on, Durga, or the constellation Virgo with her lion, Leo, is going to start rising up in the east and become, as we get later and later at night, she's going to take over and she's going to drive him out of the sky. And actually, this is the head. In this case, Orion is envisioned as having the head of a bull, and she basically chops off his head. So his head is now over here, and his body is over here. And you can read about the myths, or you can even, if you go on YouTube and just look up Durga, Mahish Asur, you'll find like animations from India. They'll be all in Hindi, because they know their myths. They make like cartoons of them. This is me, like, she'll cut off his head. You know, they know that Durga cuts off the head of Mahishasur because he was being too tyrannical. And so the gods had to send Durga to take care of Mahishasur. But you can see that's a dual horizon myth. That's the only myth we can talk a little bit about what it means, but you can see that this time of year. There's lots of other myths these are very important constellations that have lots of myths associated with them. But I really like that I think it's kind of delightful, the dual horizon myth. And it's not always that the one who's rising up kills the one who's sinking down. That's kind of violent. It is often, like Perseus slays Medusa. But as I show in this in the most recent video, sometimes it's also that the constellation that's sinking down is bowing down and worshiping the one that's rising up. So there's different ways that it can be, that it can play in the myths.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of great information.
I just wanted to kind of try and tie it into things that we can really see, at different times of year. So thanks a lot for that, Michael. But yeah, I really wanted to tie it into, you can go out and see this dual horizon action taking place right now. If you go to bed at 10 at night, you get up then the next morning at 5. When you go to bed, you can look at Orion before you go to bed. Get up the next morning at 5, you'll see Durga or Virgo coming up in the east.
Yeah.
And it all ties back. So it's not just neat. It's not just, gee whiz, oh, that's cool. I believe that what these ancient myths are doing is it's all tying back to the spiritual realm. We've touched on this a little bit, but Durga represents the plunge down into this life. See, Virgo is located, let me get my pen back real quick. This is Virgo on the wheel. She's located right before, remember that this is the equinox. She's located right before the plunge down into the lower half of the year. From what I've learned and from looking at these myths for so long, and also from reading other people who have written about this in previous decades and centuries, I believe that this lower half of the year represents our descent down into the physical body, where we joke about, oh, I've got, my calves are so thick, or, we're spiritual beings that are in this human body. So this plunge down into the lower half of the year, this is the first birth where we take on a physical body. Then there's kind of a spiritual birth, a second birth down at the winter solstice, where we start to connect with, wait a minute, there's a spiritual side to my nature. I have this divine spark inside of me. I can do, my chakras just got opened, or I can do mantras. I can do singing or chanting that helps me get in touch more with my spiritual side. Every culture around the world puts a great or anciently put a great deal of importance on chanting. First thing you would do in the morning in many Native American or First Nations cultures, you would sing your song first thing in the morning, last thing before, at night, sing your special song. Different chants are really, really important in different cultures for raising that connection to the spiritual. So Durga is this goddess who gives us help in this crossing, this difficult crossing where we have to go through all these physical challenges. And that's why in the Mahabharat, she shows up right before this great battle of, they call it the Battle of Kurukshetra, where there's two forces. It's like the Trojan War. So in that myth, I would argue that what's going on is, it's just like the yin and yang symbol in Taoism or Buddhism. The interplay between the two sides in the myth. It's not a literal battle. It's the battle of this life, the interplay of the spiritual and the physical. And Durga, in that particular myth, is called to at the very beginning of the battle, because we're about to plunge down into the lower half of the year. She's the one who gives you assurance that it's going to be okay. You're going to make it through. And you have to go through this, process. But she's also the one who slays, that man with the animal head, the Minotaur-looking demon, Mahishasur. That's like, hey, we all have that side in us, right? We all have an animal nature too. We don't want it to dominate us. If our animal nature dominates us, then all we're thinking about is killing and having sex and, being like this predator animal. If we run around like a predator animal all the time, we're not really in balance. So she says, look, don't worry, that animal side of you is not going to win. You got to get control of it, and I'm going to help you. So I'm just giving you some ideas of how these myths, I believe, they're not just about the stars. What they're doing is they're using the stars to teach us, I believe, spiritual truths about this interplay of all these, of the invisible realm with the visible realm. So.
Well said.
So you can go out, thanks, Graham. You can go out and actually, the more we become familiar with what's going on in the night sky, I believe the more we can understand this language that the myths are talking about, then we can get these beautiful messages that they're trying to convey to us.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can fucking be a little better at things, like not wrecking shit.
Right, and not letting, like the predator, I think that the mass of humanity is in general not psychopathic predators. I think what you've got is a few psychopathic predators can mess it up for everybody. So,
especially if they know these myths well and the rest of humanity doesn't. Right? I mean,
number one answer. So that's correct. I think these myths are talking about truths about the spiritual realm, about the impacts that the planets have on us. It's probably the spiritual realm is having impacts on the planets, but the gods are real, okay? All this stuff is real. And what you've had for the past couple thousand years is somebody saying, oh, don't pay any attention to the connection between the Bible and the stars. No, there's no connection between the Bible and the stars. It's all about, ancient history. And by the way, let's go around and stamp out people whose cultures still understand the connections to the spiritual realm that this ancient wisdom is talking about. Anyway, not to get off onto...
No, it's true. A person disconnected, sorry.
Hopefully they don't stomp you out.
Yeah, don't give them any ideas. Thanks.
Well, that gives all of our listeners, our viewers, a little something to think about for the next month or so, and we'll jump back into this maybe end of February, early March, and do another one as we come up on the equinox.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and what I'd say is, you know what's really me, I'm not the powerful one. It's like the gods, stamping out any individual who's talking about the gods, that happens in all the myths. It's like, oh, let's try and shut up. This prophet is saying something I don't like. Let's try and shut him up. Guess what? The gods are just going to say, well, okay, let me work my way out. The gods or the spiritual realm is working its way out through. You can't stop it. That's what I think. You can try, but it's like the gods are in all of humanity. The gods work their way out through humanity. It's like humanity, the gods will work their way out through humanity. So it's like bigger than me.
We're all connected.
The myths themselves the real power is not in my interpretation of the myths. The real power is in the myths themselves. So, but yeah, I do worry about those kinds of, or I do have concerns about those kinds of things. But actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Mahabharata, Durga and Krishna are telling Arjun, you know what? You just have to do what's right without worrying about the results. So don't think, oh, if I talk about this, the powerful forces could shut me down. They could mess me up. They could even try and kill me. You're supposed to do what's right as best you can. And actually, even if you don't know what the outcome is, you may refrain from doing what's right by saying, oh, the Illuminati are too powerful. I might as well just give up. You're not supposed to worry about the outcome. You're just supposed to do what's right. Leave the outcome to the gods.
Yeah.
So I kind of take, when Darren says something like, oh, you better watch out, I do have those concerns. But I believe that the best thing for us to do is to try and do what's right without too much worrying about the outcome.
Yeah.
Does that mean I don't wear a seatbelt in my car? No. I don't think that is what they're trying to say. I think they're trying to say, do what's right. It doesn't mean you can be a total idiot and just jump off of buildings without worrying about the outcome. But I think we're supposed to try and do what's right without getting too worried about a bad outcome or too greedy about a good outcome. Oh, I'm going to do this because I'll make a lot of money off of this. We're just supposed to do what's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went into that because Darren said something that, I do think about that. So I think it's worth talking about. But I think we all need to try and do what's right and without worrying about the outcome or getting too concerned about the outcome. Because there are bad actors out there.
Yeah, I agree.
That's right.
Yeah.
But keep it positive. Keep it positive. I do think the gods are trying to work out their will through, or the spirit world, whatever you want to call it, working. The invisible realm, the divine realm is working its way out through people, through all of us.
Yeah.
So that we got to get more in tune with it.
Yeah.
Spring's coming. So things are looking up. And by the time we hammer down again, the days will be longer.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yeah. Right on. Thanks
Dave.
for coming on, Dave.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks for coming
Thanks
back.
for having me.
That was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look forward to the next one.
Back and we'll do this again and 4 or 5.
Another cross quarter night.
Before the equinox for sure.
We'll do cross quarters.
I think this is a great segment. Definitely you guys should keep going with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have you on for Beltane if you want.
Hey, do you have a podcast too, Michael?
I'm trying to get it started.
Right on. Yeah, always happy to try and spread the good
knowledge
word out there. So the truth, I always like to say that not just the truth is out there, the truth is up there.
Yeah, nice.
There you go. Okay, Dave, right on, buddy. We'll see you next time.
Cool. Take care.